Today we are diving deep into a topic that is crucial, whether you are chatting with a friend, nailing that job interview, or captivating an audience. How to be a better communicator and truly impact people. Hey everybody, how's it going? Thiago here, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. In case you're new here, I've created this podcast and YouTube channel to help intermediate and advanced learners of English communicate with more confidence, more accuracy, more clarity, and more awareness. If this sounds like something you want for yourself and your English, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube and follow the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single new episode. Also, don't forget to check out my new pronunciation course, which is available on pre-sale right now. This is a course I've designed to help you learn the main connected speech patterns that native speakers use in real media and in real life. Knowing this will help you better understand them when you listen to them. And also this course is designed to help you improve your pronunciation by learning the main sounds of the English language. The course is available on pre-sale at a very special pre-sale discounted price. If you want to learn more about the course, the link to the page is here in the description under this video on YouTube, also as a pinned comment in the comment section on YouTube. And if you are on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just go to the show notes of this episode and you can find the link there. So for those of you who have been following me here for a while, you know that I always state the purpose of the channel and podcast at the beginning of every episode, right? I always say that this channel is designed to help intermediate and advanced learners of English communicate with more confidence, more accuracy, more clarity, and more awareness. But why do I say communicate and not speak? Because there is actually a difference between being a good speaker and being a good communicator. So let's start this episode today with this fundamental question. What is the difference between being a speaker and being a communicator? A speaker delivers information. The speaker might be clear, articulate, even entertaining, but their focus is on getting their message out. It's about delivering messages, broadcasting messages. This is really important, don't get me wrong. It is really important that you become a good speaker as well, because how can you effectively pass or deliver information if you're not a good speaker? However, being a communicator is a level above that, because being a communicator is about creating a connection with the people you talk to. They not only speak, but they also listen, they understand, they adapt, and they inspire action or change. You see, I like to think of being a communicator as the next level. Once you've mastered becoming a good speaker, now work on becoming a better communicator. So you can think of it like this. Think of a speaker like a radio broadcast that sends out signals or that sends out information. Okay. Being a communicator is more about engaging in a two-way street or in a two-way type of communication. It's more of a dynamic dance, let's call it, of ideas and emotions. It's about interacting with people, connecting with them on a deeper level. Okay? So why is being an effective communicator more important than just being a good speaker? Let me give you some reasons. First of all, by becoming a better communicator, you're going to be able to build better relationships with people, because good communication fosters trust, understanding, and deeper connection with others. To foster means to encourage, to inspire, to generate. Okay? So if you want to develop trust, understanding, and a deeper connection with other people, with your audience, you need to become a better communicator. Being a better communicator also helps you achieve goals. For example, maybe you have to persuade your team. Maybe you are a manager at the company you work at and you have a team that you are responsible for. You need to persuade your team that one direction is the best direction to go. How can you do that if you're not a good communicator? Or maybe you have to close a deal. Maybe you work with sales and you have to close a deal with your potential client or customer. What about motivating your kids? Maybe you are a parent. How can you motivate your kids to do the right thing, to do what they have to do, to live up to their responsibilities? Okay? So, clear communication gets you results. Again, let me stress that. It's important to be a good speaker. It's important to be able to successfully transmit information. But what we are talking about here today is to go beyond that, to become a great communicator. Being a great communicator obviously boosts your confidence as well. Because when you know you can express yourself clearly and connect with others, your self-esteem soars or grows exponentially. And this is really powerful. Finally, I would say that this ability of communicating enhances or improves leadership. Leaders who communicate well inspire their teams, resolve conflicts, and drive or encourage innovation. Okay? You see, so I look at communicating or communication as the extra layer, the extra level after you've become a good speaker. So let's level up our communication game here by going over some practical tips now. The first tip is active listening. Imagine you are at a party and someone tells you about their exciting trip to a foreign country. As the person tells you about their trip, are you really listening? Or are you just waiting to tell them about your awesome vacation? Active listening means giving your full attention, asking thoughtful questions, and showing genuine interest. Okay? For example, imagine your friend is sharing about the trip that he took recently on vacation. You can go something like this. Wow, that sounds amazing. What was the most memorable part of your trip? Would you recommend a person to go there on their vacation? You see, ask follow-up questions. Sound interested in what the other person is sharing with you. Don't just wait for your turn to speak. This is easier said than done. Sometimes it can be a challenge for us to be fully present with a person in communication. So we have to be mindful of that. If we feel like we are starting to deviate our attention and we are starting to think about what we're going to say next, we have to stop there, and bring ourselves back to the conversation. This reminds me of an interview that I saw with Matthew McConaughey, the actor, on the Lex Fridman podcast. And that was a really interesting episode and conversation they had. But one thing that Matthew talks about in that episode is the idea of being less impressed and more involved. What he means by less impressed is be less in your head and more in the present moment, because he says that if I am too impressed with talking to you here right now in this conversation, I'm not going to be fully present. I'm going to be anticipating the questions you're going to ask me. I'm going to start thinking about maybe a funny remark or a joke that I can share here or an interesting comment. So I'm not going to be fully in the moment. So he talks about being less impressed in that sense and more involved in whatever is going on there. So that's the first tip. Practice active listening. Practice being more involved, more in the moment as you talk to other people in real life. The second tip is about nonverbal communication. Did you know that most of our communication isn't even in words? It's in our body language, our facial expressions, and tone of voice. So you can practice maintaining eye contact. This is really important. If you are talking to a person live, in real life, practice looking at the person in the eye as you talk to them. If you are having an online meeting or recording a video like I'm recording right now, you have to practice looking at the camera, looking at the lens, that little hole, that little thing there that is staring right in front of you. So either on a laptop or on a camera, practice looking directly at the lens. This is about looking directly at people, making eye contact with them. You can also practice using open and welcoming gestures. So for example, it's never a good idea, in my opinion, for you to talk to a person like this, folding your arms. For those of you who are watching me on YouTube or in video, you can see me folding my arm now. Can you imagine if I talk to you like this, the whole podcast? I mean, what kind of message does that send you, or does that give you? Maybe I'm too apprehensive. Maybe I'm too closed. I'm not really open, to talking to you, to sharing stuff with you. So adopt more of an open and welcoming body language. About that, even smiling can be really powerful. Smile when you talk to people. Yeah. Don't be too serious, or don't have that long face. I mean, you don't have to exaggerate, like talk like this all the time. Of course not. But have that facial expression of friendliness, of openness. Okay? And of course, practice speaking with enthusiasm. This is really important, especially if you have to give a presentation, okay? Or if you have to persuade someone of something, convince someone of something. Practice speaking with enthusiasm. Let me give you a practical tip here. If you happen to make videos for the internet, or if you happen to have live calls on Zoom, Google Meet, whatever, when you record videos for the internet, naturally there is a barrier between you and your audience because there is a lens here, there's a camera, okay? So the way for you to break through that barrier is by being a little bit more enthusiastic than you would normally be in real life, okay? It's about raising your tone of voice a little bit more, projecting your voice a little bit more, and maybe exaggerating a little bit more your moves and the way you speak, okay? Because then you can break through that barrier and connect and touch the people on the other side who are watching you on video. This is a practical tip. So if you are in front of a camera, don't speak exactly like you speak in real life, because then your energy level is going to be just too low, okay? When you are in real life with people, that's okay, because the fact that you are there in person transmits other things, that build that connection. But when you are on camera or online like this, you don't have that so much. So you gotta be a little bit more enthusiastic when you communicate to really get to the other person. The next tip about being a great communicator has to do with clarity and conciseness, okay? Conciseness is about being concise. So have you ever listened to someone ramble on and you totally lose track of what they're saying? That has happened to me many times. I'm sure you have experienced that as well. When a person rambles on, the person never gets to the point. The person talks, and talks, but usually the person talks in circles like that, and the person never really makes a point, okay? This is not a trait of a great communicator. So you want to aim for clarity, you want to speak as clearly as you can, and you want to get to the point as fast as possible. This is being concise, when you are able to communicate clearly using as few words as possible. So here's a tip, a practical tip to accomplish that or to achieve that. Before you speak, take a moment to organize your thoughts. It's okay to take a moment, embrace the pause, collect your thoughts, and then share what you want to share. Use simple language and avoid unnecessary jargon. Jargon is vocabulary that is specific to a group of people who work in a field, who work in the same field, for example. Avoid fancy terminology, fancy language. You don't need that. Use simple language, but clearly and concisely. Okay? So embrace the pauses, like I just said, and control the filler words. Filler words are those words and short phrases that we use in conversation to fill the pause or to fill the silence. For example, like, you see, right? It's okay to use them. They can be very helpful, actually. And I'm going to make a video about them pretty soon here on the channel. But if you are at a higher level, you want to better control how many filler words you use. Okay? I use filler words all the time when I communicate. But nowadays, what I try to do is I try to be mindful of them and not use them as much. Okay? Because if you use too many filler words, your speech gets distracting. All right? But again, there is a place for filler words, but I'm going to make another video about that. The next tip has to do with empathy and understanding. This is huge, guys. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. In other words, imagine yourself in the person's situation. Try to understand their perspective, even if you disagree. It's important that we all, as individuals, practice this, that we practice empathy and understanding, trying to understand the other person's perspective if we are to have a productive dialogue about anything. For example, imagine a friend of yours is sharing a struggle that he or she has. You can say something like, I understand you're frustrated. It sounds like you're feeling blah, blah, blah. That'll be the emotion. It sounds like you're feeling a little bit lost because you don't know which career to choose, right? Which career path to choose, maybe. Okay? Learn where the person is coming from. This is really important, guys. Sometimes we talk to someone and the person shares some thoughts and ideas and opinions that we really don't agree with. And for us, it's just so outside of what we consider, of what we judge to be correct. But it's important that we take a step back, breathe, and try to learn where the person is coming from. Because usually, guys, we form our opinions, our ideas of the world and life based on our history, right? I mean, your opinions about things tend to be related to your upbringing, the family you come from, the country you come from, your life experience, the things that you have gone through and haven't gone through in your life. So all those things shape the way we think and the way we look at the world, So I find that trying to understand where the person comes from, in that sense, has helped me be more acceptant of divergent opinions and be able to actually engage in a productive argument to share my thoughts, my side of things, and vice versa. The next tip has to do with adaptability. Different situations and audiences require different communication styles. This is true, especially if you are a person who gives presentations all the time, or you are a professional who's always traveling to deliver speeches and classes. Okay? So take your audience into account. What works for a casual chat with friends, for example, might not be appropriate for a business presentation. What works in a specific country that you go speak at might not work in another country when you go to speak in that place. Okay? So be aware of your audience and adjust your tone, vocabulary, and level of formality accordingly. So you gotta have this feel for who you are speaking with and adjust your language accordingly. This is really important as well. Finally, guys, I want to talk to you a little bit about the voice. Part of being a great communicator in English, in your native language even, is about mastering your voice. Your voice is like your instrument. So, do you know how to play your instrument well? Do you know how to use your voice well? Some things for you to be on the lookout for here when it comes to the voice. Varying the tone. I've already talked about the tone that you adopt here, right? So vary the tone when you speak. All right? Sometimes you can speak with a little bit more intensity. And sometimes you can just take a notch or two down and speak in a more light way. Okay? Vary the pace. The pace is the speed with which you speak. You know, it's good for you to have your base pace, let's say, your normal pace. That's the pace that you usually communicate with, which is not too fast and not too slow. But depending on what you're communicating, sometimes you can speed up a little bit and be more intense and faster in your communication. And then you can slow down and take the audience back to finalize your point. You see, so this is varying the pace. Also vary the intensity, like I just said. The intensity of your tone, okay? Speak with more intensity, reduce the intensity. As you can see, this is all about not speaking monotone. A person who speaks in a monotone way speaks in a monotone way, right? I mean, there isn't much variation in the person's tone of voice. You see, you should be going up and then going down. This is much more dynamic and exciting to listen to. People who only talk in a monotone way are usually really boring to listen to. So reflect and try to change that if you happen to be one of those people who speaks at a monotone level, okay? Also, when it comes to mastering your voice, learn to project it. Learn to project your voice. Projecting your voice is about speaking outwards, okay? Not speaking inside. It's about, yes, raising the volume a little bit, but it's not about shouting. You don't want to shout like that. This is shouting, okay? But you don't want to speak too light or too low either. You see the difference? This is a problem because if I don't project my voice, how can you better understand me? You see, so there is a fine line here. Yeah, you want to have enough grip in your diaphragm, you know, in the way you breathe, and in your vocal cords to be able to project your voice powerfully without having to scream and shout, of course. But remember, speak outwards, all right? You can practice this with theater classes, with singing lessons. Singing lessons are very useful for that because you learn to breathe properly when you learn to sing. And also you learn to project your voice in a way that doesn't hurt your throat, your vocal cords, okay? Finally, about mastering your voice, articulate the words as clearly as you can. Articulation is about moving your mouth more so that you are sure to articulate, to enunciate, to pronounce the words as properly, as correctly, as clearly as possible, okay? Avoid mumbling. When a person mumbles, the person doesn't move their mouth so much, okay? So if you mumble, you tend to sound more like this, you know? So now I'm talking to you right now. I'm not really being mindful of articulating so much. I'm not moving my mouth so much. Maybe you can still understand me, but you agree that this is not so impactful, not so powerful when it comes to communication. You see, you want to articulate the words, the sound, as much as you can. Look at how my mouth moves now. If you are watching me on video, my mouth moves all the time, guys. Okay? Because I'm very mindful of that. And I believe you should be mindful too. So articulate the words as clearly as you can. Especially if you speak a a language as your native language that doesn't move the mouth so much. So reflect on that too. Look at your first language. Look at people who speak your first language and think to yourself, do we naturally articulate the words, or we tend to mumble more or speak more in our mouth? Now, to wrap up the episode, I want to give you some bonus tips. I'm going to go through them quickly now, but I do plan to make one individual episode about each one of them because I believe that these are really important for us to learn about and to master when it comes to becoming better communicators. Okay? First of all, learn the basics of storytelling. Learn storytelling because people are naturally drawn to stories. Okay? If you are able to tell a story, people will naturally listen to you more easily. Okay? This is useful, guys, even when presenting hard data. Imagine you have a job that involves many numbers and graphs and statistics. Okay? It's possible for you to present numbers, hard data, using principles of storytelling in your presentation by building a narrative around those numbers. So you are telling a story, you are telling a narrative with those numbers. This is much more impactful than just presenting the numbers. Okay, we had an increase of this percent and a decrease of this percent, So even when presenting hard data, storytelling can be powerful. One example I can give you here personally is the video I published here on the channel a few months ago, where I share my personal story of how I went from A1, beginner level of English, all the way to an advanced level of English. That is one of the most successful videos on my channel so far. It has almost 500,000 views. But I believe that part of that is because that's a story that I'm sharing there. And I tell my story in that video. If you haven't seen it, you can watch it later. I tell my story following the basic principles of storytelling. There is a logical sequence of events that I take you through there that keeps the story engaging. So learn the basics of storytelling. This is really powerful. Another tip, learn to give and receive feedback properly. When, we work with people, yeah? We study with people, we work with people, we sell to people, we buy from people, we negotiate with people. So it's important, especially if you work at a team, that you know how to give feedback, both positive and constructive feedback, and also how to accept positive and, more importantly, constructive feedback. These are all hallmarks of a great communicator. Okay? And finally, being a good communicator is about being able to manage conflict and disagreement because, again, sometimes disagreements and conflicts are inevitable. People have different opinions. People have diverging views. But that doesn't mean that you can't work together. But in order to do that, you got to be able to manage conflict and disagreement successfully. You see, so I do plan to make one individual episode about each one of these, but I just wanted to briefly mention them here because I also believe that these are characteristics of a great communicator. So in this episode, we learned the main difference between being a good speaker and being a good communicator, and also why you should strive to be a good communicator, ultimately, not just a good speaker. Okay? And then we went over some tips like active listening, practice being in the moment when you are talking to someone. Mind your nonverbal communication. That's your facial expressions, your body gestures, even your tone of voice when you communicate with people. Speak clearly and concisely. Be short and effective in your communication. Don't ramble. All right? Show empathy and understanding when talking to other people. Put yourself in the person's shoes. Adapt to different people, different audiences, different situations, and adjust your communication style accordingly. Then master your voice. Learn to vary the tone of your voice, the pace, the intensity learn to project your voice better, and articulate the words as much as possible. Finally, we finished with the quick tips, right? Learn the basics of storytelling, learn to give and receive feedback properly, and learn to manage conflict and disagreement, all right? So that's all I have for you today in this episode. I hope you found these tips useful. Don't forget to check out my pronunciation course available on pre-sale. With this course, you're going to learn the main connected speech patterns that native speakers use so you can better understand them. And also, you're going to learn the main sounds of the English language so you can communicate with more clarity, more flow, and more fluency. Link in the description or in the show notes, but do check out the course. And of course, guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube and leave me a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts because that also helps me a lot on those platforms. I'm Thiago, I'm signing off. Thank you so much for listening until now, and I'll be talking to you in the upcoming video very soon. Bye-bye.